Your face got you the job. You knew it the moment you walked in. The interviewer smiled before you said a word. The handshake lasted a beat longer than it needed to. You got the call that afternoon. 3 months later, your manager stops asking for your opinion in meetings. Your numbers are good, your work is solid, but something shifted, and you cannot name exactly when. You got a better table at the restaurant. The waiter refilled your glass first. The couple next to you watched you order. You noticed all of it, and you also noticed that you noticed, and that noticing made you tired. There is a word for what happened in that interview. Researchers have a name for it, but the name is not the interesting part. The interesting part is what the word hides. In 1972, psychologist Karen Dion at the University of Toronto asked a group of adults to evaluate children's behavior based on photographs. The files were identical. Same descriptions, same incident. A child had thrown a ball at another child hard enough to cause a bruise. Half the evaluators saw a photo of a plain-looking child alongside the file. Half saw a photo of an attractive child. The attractive children were consistently rated as less likely to do it again, less likely to be a behavior problem. One evaluator wrote without prompting that the incident was probably just an accident. The child in the photo was 7 years old and had done nothing except look a certain way. That same year, Dion published the phrase that stuck. What is beautiful is good. 3 words, simple enough to print on a coffee mug, and for 30 years, most of the research treated it as an uncomplicated gift. But gifts have weight. In 1995, 2 economists at the University of Texas, Daniel Hammermish and Jeff Biddle, pulled wage data from 4 large labor surveys. They were looking for a number. They found it. Workers rated as below average in appearance earned about 9% less per hour than workers rated average. Workers rated above average earned about 5% more. The premium was real. They called it a beauty wage premium, and the press ran with it. Attractive people earn more. The story was clean. The number held up. It has been replicated in Canada, Germany, China, and the United Kingdom, with results close enough to treat as stable. Good-looking people do earn more on average. That part is not wrong. What the headline did not mention was the second number buried in the same data. Hammermish and Biddle also found that the premium was not evenly distributed for women in certain fields, particularly fields where appearance was part of the job description. The premium compressed into something almost testicular noise, but in fields where appearance had no obvious functional role. The gap widened, and in those fields, the attractive workers reported something else, not satisfaction. Suspicion. The pattern had a name. The beauty is beastly effect. It had been documented first in 1977 by 2 psychologists, Robert Dipboy and Richard Arvey, who noticed that evaluators sometimes penalized attractive female applicants for masculine-type jobs. The reasoning was never stated. It showed up in the numbers anyway. A woman applying for a job as a prison guard or a mechanical engineer was rated less competent when her photo was attractive than when it was plain. The same woman, the same resume. The mechanism was not hostility. That was the part that took decades to understand clearly. It was something more automatic than hostility. In 2010, Stephanie Johnson at the University of Colorado ran a series of experiments where evaluators rated job candidates with and without photos when no photo was present. Attractive candidates benefited from their written descriptions. The words did the work. When a photo was added, something changed in how the words were processed. The photo did not add information. It subtracted it. Evaluators spent less time on the resume when an attractive face was attached. They had already decided something, and the rest was paperwork. Johnson called this cognitive offloading. The face answered the question before the question was fully formed, and once the face had answered, the brain stopped checking. That is the mechanism, and it runs in both directions. In 2007, Marcus Mobius at Harvard University and Tanya Rosenblatt at Wesleyan University published a study that tried to isolate exactly which component of the beauty premium was doing the most work. They ran a series of tasks where employers paid workers for performance and rated the workers by appearance. Then they held constant every variable they could measure: productivity, communication, confidence, task accuracy. When they pulled out each factor one by one, they found that a significant portion of the premium persisted even after controlling for actual performance. Employers just predicted that attractive workers would perform better, and they paid for the prediction before the performance arrived. The prediction was often wrong. The attractive workers did not outperform consistently, but the employers continued to make the same prediction the next time. This is where the story stops being about wages. If an employer consistently predicts that you will succeed, they give you harder projects. Harder projects build skills. Skills compound. After 5 years, the gap between two workers of equal starting ability has grown, and the employer points to the gap as evidence. They were right. The prediction created the outcome it predicted. The research on this is newer and less tidy, but it points in a direction that no one who studies appearance bias seems to enjoy publishing. In 2011, psychologist Maria Agthi at Ludwig Maximilian University in Munich ran a set of experiments where managers evaluate employees. The finding was uncomfortable. When an employee was of the same gender as the manager, high attractiveness reliably produced lower performance evaluations over time. Not in the first meeting, not in the first month, across the extended relationship. Something curdled. Agthi proposed that threatened self-attide was doing the work. The manager, faced with a direct report who was visibly more attractive, began to unconsciously reweight the evidence. Good work was attributed to circumstance. Mistakes were weighted more heavily. The evaluations drifted. The attractive employee had no way to see the mechanism. They saw the numbers. Here is what the numbers look like from the inside. You get the job, you get the early vote of confidence, you get put on a visible project, then the project finishes and you are not promoted. You ask why. No one has a clean answer. You know your work is good because you have the work in front of you, but somewhere between the work and the evaluation, the signal decays, and you cannot find where the attractive person who gets the job at twice the rate of equally qualified candidates has to figure out which of their successes were theirs. That is not a solvable problem from the inside. In 2016, a team led by Satoshi Kanazawa at the London School of Economics published a paper arguing that more attractive people were less likely to cooperate in prisoner's dilemma games. The results got picked up immediately. Beautiful people are less cooperative. It fit something people wanted to believe. The paper was later heavily criticized on methodological grounds by multiple researchers, including problems with the attractiveness ratings themselves and the sample composition. The story people reach for about attractive people is not the beauty premium. The story people reach for is the story that attractive people are also somehow less good. That story has a function. It resolves attention. It resolves attention. If someone has an advantage you did not choose and cannot acquire, there are two stable responses. The first is to change how you feel about the advantage. The second is to find a cost that balances the ledger. Most people choose the second option without knowing they chose it. There is research on this. In 2014, social psychologist Bram Bunk at the University of Groningen in the Netherlands ran a series of studies on how coworkers rated attractive colleagues over time. The initial ratings were positive across every dimension. Over the course of several months, the ratings did not stay positive. The specific dimensions that declined were the interpersonal ones: warmth, trustworthiness, teamwork. The dimensions that remained elevated were the individual ones: competence, drive. The shift was not dramatic. It was small and consistent. The attractive coworker gradually became, in the ratings, someone good at their job who you would not confide in. That shift, across hundreds of small workplace interactions, is a specific kind of loneliness. You are the person at the party that everyone notices and no one approaches first. You are the person at the team dinner who gets credit for the idea and then gets excluded from the follow-up. You have more invitations than relationships. You have more first conversations than second ones. The research on friendship formation and physical appearance is not kind. Decades of studies on how attractiveness affects social network formation point in one direction. Attractive individuals consistently report larger networks in terms of contact frequency. They also report lower average relationship depth. More acquaintances, fewer people who know what they are actually going through. The mechanism is not mysterious. People approach attractive strangers differently than they approach plain ones. The approach is more performance, less honesty. The attractive person on the receiving end of 1,000 slightly performance-inflected conversations begins to lose track of what an unguarded conversation feels like. This part is harder to measure, but the accounts show up consistently enough in the quality of a decision. Now, the strongest counter argument. All of this could be noise around a strong signal. The beauty premium is real. The employment advantages are real. The wage advantage is real. The evidence that attractive people have worse outcomes on net is not there. The evidence shows that on the dimensions most economists and sociologists choose to measure, attractive people do better. More income, more callbacks, more professional opportunity. If you are choosing between being attractive and a system that rewards attractiveness, the rational choice is obvious. And perhaps the psychological costs described above are the kind of costs that come with any privilege. Having power is stressful. Having resources creates responsibility. Having advantage makes it harder to know what you actually earned. These are not unique problems. They are the problems that attach to advantage in general. The person who inherits money does not know what they would have made on their own. The person who is born into networks does not know what doors they could have opened. The person whose face gets the first 5 seconds of the interview has the same problem at a different scale. That reading would close the case, but it requires assuming that the thing being distributed is actually an advantage rather than a front-loaded version of something more complicated. Several longitudinal studies that tracked workers across multiple years have found a consistent asymmetry. Attractive workers start with higher evaluations over time. The gap between their objective performance and their superlative evaluations narrows in one specific direction. Attractive workers who were high performers were not rated significantly higher than equally strong unattractive workers after several years, but attractive workers who had a single visible failure were rated significantly lower than unattractive workers with the same failure on record. The premium arrives early. The premium arrives early. The penalty arrives late, and the premium, the person who benefits from the early prediction, pays for it when the prediction fails, at a higher rate than someone the prediction never noticed. This is not an argument that attractive people are victims. That reading would require ignoring most of the evidence. The advantages are real, and they are large, and they are distributed from birth through childhood, through education, through early employment in ways that compound before anyone has had a chance to make a single decision. But the architecture of the advantage has a structure. It front loads, it creates early access and early credit and early confidence from the outside, and it creates, in parallel, a specific kind of uncertainty that does not go away when the advantages pile up. You do not know which room you would have gotten into on your own. You do not know which collaborator actually wanted to work with you. You do not know whether the person who told you the truth about your work was managing their own discomfort about your face or actually reading your work. You have more data than most people, and less of it is clean. That is not the cost of failure. That is the cost of a specific kind of success, and the system that produces it was not designed for your benefit. It was designed for the people looking. They found the variable, they found that it worked. They built everything around it, and then they kept going. The face on the screen is not a person to them. It is a predictor. It has been a predictor for long enough that no one who profits from the prediction thinks of it that way anymore. They think they are just responding to something real. They are. They just cannot tell you what it is. You are the evidence they use to prove themselves, right? And when you are not quite right enough, they update the predictor, not the theory. You never knew you were the data.